Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to our first scheduled work session of 2022, Monday, February 7th. I would ask Lieutenant Scott to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Colleagues and friends and neighbors in Haverford Township, this is our first meeting in Black History Month. The month of February is significant in Black history. The NAACP was founded on February 12, 1909, the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. In 1926, the group now known as the Association for the Study of African American Life and History sponsored a National Negro History Week in 1926, choosing the second week of February to coincide with the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. It grew to an unofficial monthly celebration until, in 1976, President Gerald Ford officially declared the month of February as National Black History Month, as has every American president since. Many other countries, including Canada and the United Kingdom, recognize it as well. It is not possible for those of us who are not African American truly to understand the experience of African Americans in dealing with racism. Because of that, we must not cover our eyes to their stories, but must truly listen. We cannot shut our eyes to the encounters played out on videos and camera phones and body cams and dashboard cams, but must instead watch closely and see clearly. We cannot close our minds to the uncomfortable reality for so many Americans, but instead open our minds to the fact that our system does not always provide equal justice or equal access to all, but that it can be divided starkly along racial and socioeconomic lines. We cannot stay quiet in the face of such obvious and stark injustice, but must instead use our voices loudly to decry injustice. Only when we see with open eyes, listen with open ears, think with open minds, and speak the truth with loud voices will we be able to begin to heal this country's century-old infection of racism. So I wanted to take advantage of our work session in Black History Month to remind all of us of the two important roles Haverford Township plays in our community. First, and obviously, as a governing body, but less obviously, as one of this township's largest employers. These dual roles place two separate duties on us. As a large employer, we have a duty to be legally compliant with federal law, state law, and our own locally imposed statutory obligations to be fair, inclusive, open-minded, and non-discriminatory. We live under and by the same obligations that are on all of our businesses to obey the law in spirit and in practice. Additionally, as the government, our duty is not just to be legally compliant, but to be aspirational, to set an example for others to follow, and to recognize that we as government officials are stewards for the good works our township can do, and the responsibility it proudly bears while it governs as well as employs. We have faced issues of racism and discrimination and intimidation in our township in the past, and in response to a particular event that required the township to examine its own practices in history and commitment to diversity and inclusion, we retained the expert assistance of ICW Consulting Group. I now invite representatives of ICW to speak on the work they've already undertaken for the township and to advise us of the next steps we will undertake together as an employer in this township and as an example to this township.
Very much.
We need you in the microphone.
So you'll face us because the camera's not on.
Oh,
That's right.
Welcome.
thank you so much for those opening comments. I found them extremely moving and extremely pertinent and to the point for the work that we are joining you in partnership to do. ICW was invited into the township when there was an incident, a precipitating event. And often the precipitating event is an opportunity. And in this case, the township did open to that opportunity and begin to address a vision of creating a more inclusive Haverford Township. We began working with Bonaire, the Bonaire Fire Department. And what we began with was what we called inclusive listening conversations. Given our experience around the country with towns and townships, it is always a good idea from our perspective to begin by listening. And to begin by listening offers the opportunity to model the kinds of skills and behaviors we're wanting to support that will continue to help you all live in community. Now, as Haverford Township becomes increasingly diverse, your goal and objective of creating and fostering an inclusive township, a township where all people who work, live, and visit will feel welcomed, begins with listening. So after meeting with the folks at Bonaire, we met with each of the firehouses, each leadership of the firehouses, and then we created a plan where we would work with the entire township across groups, bringing different groups together, beginning with bringing people together across departments, to create what we call inclusive learning conversations, structured with some concepts, some guiding concepts, and fostering conversations. We have already begun that process. And with that, I will pause and turn it over to you, Dave. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. Yes. I was doing the beginning and the end and Nelson.
Thank you. I'm going to take down my mask to talk a little bit, but I'll stay away from you. We're in a continuation of the work now. The first thing that needs to be said is that it was brave of the township to tackle the work. People usually want to come in with a hammer and start hammering on people. But what we believe is that people have to listen to each other because everyone has a story. So these learning conversations let people listen to each other, build some empathy, build some skill, and build some muscle to make some changes later. So this work will continue across department with commissioners, with the various departments of the township, and eventually include the community. So the idea is that people learn how to listen to each other. People get to hear each other's story, and they begin to envision the future they want to have together, because everybody's voice is important. The people who are new to the township, the people who have always been here, the people who have a history here. So our goal is to continue this learning. And the other thing I'll say is most people want to wave a wand. We want a 1-hour course. We want 3 things to tell us not to do. But we didn't get here in 3 months or 6 months, and we won't get out of this for 3 months and 6 months. So while the rest of the country remains confused, this is a chance for this township to listen to each other, hear each other's stories, and move forward.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a hard
Can
act to follow,
Could I
Nelson.
ask a question?
Sure.
Would feel comfortable giving any
Hi, Lauren.
anecdotes?
Congratulations, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Nice to see you. Thanks for the presentation. Okay. Would you feel comfortable sharing anything about the sessions and just in general terms, like how they went, what kinds of, not things you heard, but like what was the experience like of doing it and what kind of feedback?
I would be happy.
Eileen, if you would return to the mic, yeah.
I would be happy to share, I'm following my partner's lead here. I would be happy to share some very high-level ideas about how the session operates. One of the things that is a marker of our sessions is that we talk about this issue at the individual, interpersonal level, what happens in just basic interactions and relationships. We talk about it at the group level and the multiple groups that we belong to. We belong to our family. We belong to our department. We belong to and then we talk about the possible groups that you may identify with and open up the opportunity for participants to tell their own story framed by what are the different aspects that define them. We find that for some of us, we're defined by people before we have an opportunity to define ourselves. And so it teaches that first lesson around listening and around being willing to be surprised by who you discover that person is. And then we talk about the dynamics of intergroup behavior and what it means to seek to understand. And what we have found in our work, and I'm going to tell you just as an aside, I found this so compelling that I made it, I did my doctoral studies mid-career to just explore this, is that we have found that while diversity gets a controversial perspective, is seen as controversial by many, when people have a really good experience in facilitated conversations, in facilitated learning, they come away feeling like they can interact and have richer, deeper relationships for that. And given that, it does two main things at the workplace and in community. It helps you to notice bias. I've been doing this work my whole adult career, and I wake up every morning saying, what can I notice today that I didn't notice yesterday? I'm never going to be done. And number two, it helps us think about what our respective responsibility is for psychological safety, as well as physical safety. Is that enough of a headline?
That was terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
And for the benefit, Commissioner Cavender and Commissioner Trombetta and Commissioner Forstey-Grubb, the rest of us are familiar with the work of Eileen and Nelson and Jeffrey, who first started working with us in 2019. And our work is not yet complete, but the pandemic interrupted, as it did with so many things, interrupted the meetings and the sessions that we undertook as a township. And one of the reasons why it was important, and particularly with the start of Black History Month, for us to reintroduce ICW and to remind everybody that our work is not yet done. I know that our township manager has some comments.
Mr. Holmes, thank you, and ICW, Nelson and Eileen, thank you for being here. It really means a lot to us. Black History Month does provide this opportunity to reflect on the things that we've done as a community. We've obviously engaged in some terrific conversations, and of course, we do the perfunctory training for diversity, equity, and inclusion. It can be sometimes perfunctory when you have to go and check a box, but it's so much deeper than that here. We're trying to do more. We're trying to tailor it for the township, for the organization, and for the community. So as an employer, we have already taken these steps, and we want to open our arms to people who want to come here and make this place a more welcoming place to work and to live. Besides our continued work with ICW, last year the Board of Commissioners modified the civil service regulations to eliminate the need for police department applicants to have Act 120 certification prior to completing the testing process. This modification resulted in a larger and more diverse applicant pool. In fact, it more than doubled the number of applicants from our prior year that we were hiring. Are we perfect? Of course not, and we're never gonna be. It's a work in process. We're gonna make mistakes. We have to pick ourselves up and dust ourselves off and work to make Haverford Township an even more desirable place to live and work, not just for those who have lived here their entire life, but for everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Township Manager, and thank you, Nelson. Thank you, Eileen. Thank Jeffrey on our behalf as well. Next week at our official meeting, we will proclaim the accomplishments of a group of Haverford Township High School students who organized and supervised one of the largest, most impactful, and peaceful demonstrations in our region in June of 2020. In Black History Month, many organizations and governing bodies will herald the accomplishments of African Americans who have made great contributions to their neighborhoods or to their causes or to their country. We do not do justice to those accomplishments if we do not recognize the adversity and impediments blocking their efforts to so achieve. That is why when we herald the accomplishments of African Americans during the month of February, we cannot look at those accomplishments without understanding and appreciating the setting in which those accomplishments took place, and marveling at the willingness for those heroes to work within the confines of so stratified a society to still achieve greatness. When we celebrate Black History Month, we will do so with an honest examination and intelligent understanding of the impediments purposely placed in the way of our fellow African American citizens to achieve those goals. It is laudable to herald someone who climbs Mount Everest. Indeed, it is our duty to do so. But it is not also our duty to recognize, in particular, those who made that climb but started 1 mile underground. On that, I will move on to our next agenda item. Pension Investment Manager's 2021 Performance Update. Mr. Glacken.
I'd like to first say thank you and welcome. We greatly appreciate the opportunity, and we've been partnering with the township and PFM since 2008. In fact, you guys hired us right before the market came crashing down in 2008, almost to the day. I'm going to bring you to page 1.1 on the performance report. CBIZ INR is an investment advisory firm. I'm Mike Glacken, president of CBIZ INR. We manage over 130 some municipal pension plans throughout the Commonwealth, sit on over $57 billion and ranked number 11th on Barron's list. And as I said, we've been fortunate to work with the township since 2008. Last 3 years, we've seen significant growth on the pension sides, which have allowed us to lower the assumed interest rate pretty dramatically. And this year, well, 2021 was another double-digit year in addition to 2019 and 2020, which your valuation was dependent on 2020 and 2019, which allowed us to substantially reduce your assumed interest rate. So for the year of 2021, we had a performance of 11.38% above our blended benchmark. We are known as the all-market indexed managers throughout the Commonwealth. You hold over 5,000 public stock holdings through us and over 20,000 bond positions. So our clients, they really know three things about us: extremely efficient, we adhere to the benchmark, you own pretty much the entire market, and we constantly buy it on sale, so eventually we're going to look smart. So at the end of 2020, when large cap growth was up dramatically, we sold large cap growth and bought value cheap, and that's why we had better than benchmark performance on the equity side. We will take advantage of some short-term strategic things in 2021 we dramatically reduced the duration of the bond portfolio, so when interest rates went up, we were rather flat on the bond side instead of down almost 2%. And since inception, we've been above our blended benchmark by over 1% since 2008, so we're very proud of that as well. On the police side, or on the non-uniform side, we had almost the same exact performance because we're strictly adhering to your 60% equity, 40% fixed income investment policy statement. You will see us right around, because we call ourselves the benchmark, you will see us pretty close to the benchmark. There was some significant overperformance since inception because of some, as I said, some strategic moves that we made throughout the history of the management. So we greatly appreciate the opportunity, really enjoyed the partnership, and any questions on our side?
Any questions from my colleagues? Thank you, Mr. Glacken, and thank you for your continued excellent work.
Thank you.
Mr. Chada.
Good evening. Good to see some familiar faces and some new faces. To those that are new, welcome. So just want to speak to the PFM asset management portion of the pension funds and really touch on the performance of the portfolio for 2021. So referring to the same page that Mike was referring to under the police fund, you can see that for the year, the return for the PFM asset management piece was 12.53%. relative to the benchmark return of 11.31%. So you'll notice strong absolute results, but also strong results relative to the benchmark. And you may notice that our results are a bit different than CBIZ INR. And in a way, the intentional decision that the township has made to have two advisors that have two different styles of investing, two complementary styles, help to benefit over the long term. And you can see that top line number in the blue row of a return of 11.72% versus 11.31%. Those are the true returns of the pension fund, the police pension fund, and non-uniform is similar as well relative to the benchmark. So you see some outperformance there over the market. Just a couple points to make around 2021 specifically. Why did PFM Asset Management perform? What intentional decisions did we make, and what are we thinking as we look to the markets moving ahead? So first and foremost, we continue to recognize easy monetary policy and an accommodative Fed, an accommodative administration when it came to economic policy and stimulus. And so, we recognized, where that could potentially take the equity markets. We were overweight equities relative to the investment policy for the duration of 2021. In addition to that, we did recognize that in a low interest rate environment that fixed income would be challenged. And so we looked for different areas of the market to diversify the portfolio and to also add some additional income, whether that was preferred equity, public real estate, looking to riskier or more high interest earning areas of fixed income like corporate credit and high yield. And then the other decision that we had made is, we recognize that inflation is something that we are dealing with. And so we made a decision to hedge for inflation by adding commodities into the portfolio as well, to provide some diversification there and to neutralize some of the activity happening along those lines. So overall, though, results strong for the year, as we've mentioned, and we're positioning 2022 in a similar way. Challenged fixed income environment. Equities, we think, will be a little challenged as well. Markets may be a bit more volatile. But once again, the fact that CBIZ INR is, they own the market, they're looking to take or make some strategic moves here, and then we're trying to read the market and read the tea leaves. We're confident in outcomes moving forward as well. Any questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Now, next on our printed agenda is the Historical Commission, but I know the Historical Commission has asked to postpone their presentation to us until the next month. So we now invite up a representative of the Environmental Advisory Commission, Mr. Puglianese, to discuss a proposed ordinance regulating plastic bags, plastic straws, variety of things. Welcome.
Thank you. Again, Peter Puglianese with Environmental Advisory Committee. This plastic bag ordinance was originally a request more than 2.5 years ago of Commissioner D'Amelio of the EAC to evaluate alternatives, look at the need. And we actually presented about almost 2 years ago, exactly, a very similar presentation. So I'm going to go through, the presentation is mostly explaining the need, okay, not so much the ordinance. The ordinance that you have as part of the package tonight is actually the one that was 2 years ago submitted for consideration, went on hiatus, as you know, due to COVID. There was a state action that put a stay on plastic bag local ordinances. So what you have is essentially what was 2 years ago, and I'll talk about what we've done since then to sort of relook at it and refresh it. But first of all, so the rationale for this is the need, okay? And I don't think anyone is unfamiliar with the need at this point in time, but we are awash in plastic litter, trash that finds its way throughout the environment, throughout the world, accumulates in plastic islands in the middle of the Pacific. You've all heard about microplastics. It degrades due to ultraviolet light and forms microplastics, which have been found in, humans and animals. So the need is really established in many of these documents. And so I won't really go through the specifics of it. I think you all understand it. It was really requested of EAC because of the knowledge that this is a global problem. Can we recycle our way out of this? Well, essentially, we have the option today. Every grocery store has a way to recycle plastic bags. Has that stopped everything from blowing in the wind and traveling downstream and getting into the environment? No. So this is not a solution. The role of single-use plastic bags is one of the big actors in this problem. Why? Because they are so thin, they are easily transported by wind and water. So we're going to go over some of the local ordinances that informed our original draft of this. But the objective is to reduce pollution in our community, in our waterways, ingestion of plastics, and contribution to the regional and global problems. So definitions: single-use plastic bag, reusable bag. You are all familiar with both of those things. Fee, and we'll talk about why a fee. But the facts are that a tremendous amount of plastics find its way into the environment, and the single-use plastic bags are one of the big culprits of this. The plastics do not biodegrade. They form smaller and smaller plastics, particles, including microplastics. What about bioplastics, right? Bioplastics are essentially plastics made from natural feedstocks, okay? Polylactic acid is one. But bioplastics really can be just as persistent in the environment. So are they a solution by themselves? No. Again, if they don't, if they're released into the environment, they really have the same problem. So more plastic facts. We all know about the effect on wildlife. Cost. This is actually costing us because of litter, because of cleanups, because of effects on things like sports fishing and so forth, right? So, you know, many of you enjoy waterways. Many of you have been to waterways that were themselves awash in plastic. So these things also have real economic effects. So, fun facts about plastic bags. Links are in the presentation. I don't want to go through it, but this is not new, okay? This is different for us, okay? And change is difficult, but this is not new. There are entire states indicated on the map in blue that have effectively regulated this statewide, okay? If you've ever been to California, New York. So you're not going to walk out of a store with a bag without incurring a fee, right? So this is not new. And the importance of it not being new is that all of our regional and national chains are no stranger to this, and many of them are already doing the things that we're proposing be done universally. So these are some of the bans. Many states, locally, Narberth, Westchester, and Philadelphia were sort of the model that we looked at. Within the last 2 years now, Media and Easttown are now considering similar legislation. So it's happening locally as well as nationally. I'm going to skip over this. This statewide ban is over, okay? In part because Philadelphia and some other municipalities that joined challenged the basis, the way the ban was enacted on the state level by a writer on a budget bill, basically. So that is gone. So how do these work? 3 approaches. We really recommend the ban and fee, ban on plastic, single-use plastic, a fee on all bags. And the reason is studies of which programs really work the best, okay? So if you just ban plastic, now you have paper, okay? Paper does biodegrade. It is more easily recycled in single stream, but it is also resource intensive, and it's actually more expensive for the stores, right? So it's not really impact-free. So really the objective of coupling the fee with the ban on single-use plastics is to encourage reuse, okay? The reuse that most supermarkets have been doing for many years, right? They're charging a fee for single-use plastic bags. They're selling reusable bags, and many, if not most people in our community are using that model today. Okay, so it's not new. I will say one of the things that I've noticed within the last 2 years is, and there was some concern about, well, what about CVS? What about Wawa? Wawa is contending with it regionally, right? There are ordinances in place throughout the region. They're now selling reusable bags in Wawa, right across the parking lot. So it's new, it's different, there's adjustment, but it's not something that we're a stranger to right now. So positives, negatives, it's not perfect, it's not seamless. This is a summary of Narberth's. Narberth did a survey. There's a lot of support in the community, okay? There's probably not universal support in the business community. Why? Because change is difficult, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But by and large, the big actors in retail, they're on board, okay? And I think one of the things that we can do and be sensitive to is the need to help small retailers transition to this, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So Westchester really has the hybrid ban and fee that I think was the best model that we looked at a couple of years ago. The Philadelphia ban, not exactly what we would suggest. They actually dropped the fee on the bags, which is problematic because all it does is sort of shift to a different single-use bag. Okay, so even though you'd say, well, you know, is it burdensome to incur a fee? Well, we think it's sort of essential to the success of what we're trying to achieve here. And if people do reuse bags, they're paying less. So they're paying less than what they would be paying at the supermarket today for supermarkets that practice that on a voluntary basis. So retailers will save money themselves if people bring their own bags. The big retailers are already on board. They're not contesting it. So one of the features of the ordinance is a mandatory fee. So the one that you had in front of you 2 years ago said 10 cents. There are those that are even increasing it, and we could increase it. One of the things that was pointed out in review is that a single-use paper bag actually costs more than 10 cents for the retailers. So one of the things we suggested is there is a track change version of this document, and we're tweaking it a little bit. We're addressing concerns. Consider any of those things optional that you could adopt, not adopt. But one of the things we realized is, well, it should be a minimum of whatever, 10 cents, 15 cents, because some retailers may want to charge more if their single-use bag is now a paper bag that costs more, right? So why not allow bioplastics? Well, the answer is they're really not performing the way they need to perform in the environment. So enough said about that. So our draft 2 years ago was this hybrid ban and fee. Obviously we need to give retailers ample time to get ready for it. One of the things that we've done is we've talked to HPED, which I think is rebranded as something else now. But HPED has already done a buy local bag campaign. So they purchased 500 buy local bags. And so one of the things that I think we can do to mitigate those effects, besides communicating to the retail community, is to maybe collaborate with an organization like HPED to make a bulk purchase, lower price, positive spin, buy local, right, type of product that's available to smaller retailers. So updates, the version that I guess will be circulated, Dave, I don't think it's been circulated yet, will have track changes, some explanatory notes. We've updated the definition of reusable bag to be better than it was, which is to say sort of the model that you'll see in the supermarkets today, which is not just a heavier plastic, but something that's really, really durable. It's sort of a laminate over a spun plastic. So the bags that you're, reusable bags that you're getting at supermarkets today, essentially, is what we're defining. We have added a definition for compliant straw. So included in this is a ban on plastic straws. The changes have, Judy requested that we look at accommodation with regard to the people that need straws, okay? And not being expert on that, it took us a while to get it, but the draft, I think, addresses that in a way that other big jurisdictions, like we borrowed from New York City, understand that, well, you really do need to make this available as an option at no cost, with no stigma, no questions asked. So that's in this draft. We're suggesting upping the fee to 15 cents. There was, a lot of the ordinances now also have plastic stirrers, so that's been added to the ordinance. Again, in draft track changes, you could accept or not accept those changes as you wish. There's a companion to the ordinance, which is a resolution requesting state action. To that resolution, we've added polystyrene food service containers as a statewide objective. It's not in the ordinance, okay? And what we tried to do, what we were also cognizant on in the ordinance, is that these local ordinances are sort of like balkanizing the retail landscape. And so we've tried to stay consistent with the other local ordinances. So we haven't added the clamshells, and one of our members was saying, well, we shouldn't allow single-use paper bags because they're so resource intensive. But again, that's consistent with the landscape. That's really the alternative that's provided. And so we have addressed straws. We've included stirrers. There are alternatives to plastic stirrers that are readily available. And because of this question of a compliance straw, so one of the things that was pointed out is that restaurants now are offering paper straws, compostable straws. Okay, so that was added as a change as an acceptable option, right? We also added, in researching New York City, we thought they did something that was smart, which is they said, if you're going to offer compostables, you have to actually compost. So if they can offer it on request, anyone gets a straw on request, no charge, no questions asked. It could be paper, it could be plastic if that's the request. If they are giving a compostable straw to everyone, then a requirement that they have a receptacle for composting that is actually composted by a commercial composter is there. So in other words, if they are saying, well, it's compostable, therefore it's good, they have to compost. So that is all the changes, I think. And we'd be happy to answer any questions. I think the updated draft is probably the one that you want to look at and discuss, well, which of these changes do you want to adopt?
Mr. Chairman, may I say something?
Yes, Mr. DeMello.
The restaurants in the surrounding area, Delaware County, specifically in Newtown Square, they will give you a paper straw, but I did ask for plastic to show how quickly they came and gave me the plastic. This is their brand. So it does bend a bit. They had no problem. I got it immediately.
Right, so under the proposed update to it, every establishment that sells food and beverages that is required to stock a plastic straw and provide it on request. And I don't think it's going to be a big demand for that,
No,
so I don't think it's a burden.
Yeah, I mean, I just did it to see, was curious to see if they had it, and they did.
They did.
They brought it right to.
And if it was a big chain, I think the knowledge base is really up there, I think, in the industry now. So I think they understand the need for that, as I didn't 2 weeks ago.
Neither did I. Judy mentioned it.
Yes, I have a few.
have we gone to the eateries around town and asked them, like done like a poll of some sort and asked them what they thought? Because it would, because I can say that there's a lot that I've talked to who just say, like, why can't we just say, I don't want a straw or I don't want a bag? Because most times I know that when we switched to the paper straws first, we switched right back because the demand was they wanted the straws, the plastic straws at my place. Like once we switched for a month and everybody was upset about that because they said the paper straws would disintegrate and we were getting a good kind of the straws and the cost that this would impact these spots too, like with the bags and everything.
So, well, the first question was survey. Have we surveyed? We haven't. Some of the local jurisdictions have done surveys. Narberth did a survey. I think Westchester did a survey. Easttown, I think, is doing a survey. I don't think Media is doing a survey, although they're considering the ordinance.
Okay.
So the results are kind of what you would expect in the community, which is there's sort of majority support, but certainly not unanimous
Yeah,
support.
because I've talked to a lot of bars around here, not from me going out to drink there, but and have asked them, and the talk there was that they weren't all in for it, and I'm not speaking for everyone, but
Yeah.
just the.
It's a change, change is never easy. I don't think the costs are really significant. I mean, there might actually be savings. So in other words, if someone has to ask for a straw, you're going to need to buy less straws.
Yeah, yeah, but that's like a hard thing too. Is like, could we just see how it goes for like a year of saying we'll just ask, like, do you want a bag or do you want a straw, and see how that works, or that cuts down anything?
It's not going to work. No due respect, that's not going to work.
No,
It's not going to work at all. No. And in fact, it is working in many different states around the United States. And the paper straws, they really don't disintegrate. They're pretty.
They're better than they used to be.
They're much better than they used to be.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like the work that you guys do. This is just me asking some pros and cons of the issues and why I might have some.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that there will be an adjustment period.
Because when I go around the town on walks and stuff, the more stuff I see on the grounds are cigarette butts and masks. And I'm not being wise or anything. I'm just saying that's what I see a lot on my walks along the trail or my walks along the ward here and stuff. That's what I see more
Yeah,
of.
bags are a big one, but they all get to those places. I mean, I spent a lot of time, in creeks for cleanups.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different stuff that
Yeah.
ends up down there. So this is not 100% of the picture, but there certainly is. I mean, you see, pieces of automobiles that have broken off, and I mean, it's a good point. It's not 100% of everything, but it is a big part of the problem.
And will this lead to the to-go containers and COVID tests being banned just because of the plastic that's used with them?
Yeah, I mean, we're happy to, consider alternatives. I think it's really, we've put some of these other things, well, straws and bags have been sort of the local combination. So it is consistent. Some of the, do we need to add the drink stir? It's really at your discretion to figure out what you want to see in this bill. The committee, I think, thinks everything that's presented in the updated one makes sense. I think, there's going to be a little bit of pushback on people that don't like change,
Yeah.
right? Or have to do things themselves, right? So retail establishments are going to have to do some things.
Yeah.
So, but there is a year run up. And I think the township can do some things in terms of outreach and maybe even assistance, like, maybe supporting an initial run of a reusable bag for local establishments that they can get at a discount. So there are things that we can do to ease the transition.
And again, thank you for all your work. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. President, may I make a few comments here?
Yes, please.
Thank you. I actually prepared remarks for this. First, I just wanted to say a special thank you, of course, to the Environmental Advisory Committee, but most importantly, Commissioner D'Amelio, who I know has been working on this for over 2 years. He reached out to me when I was still working on the Senate and expressed some interest in this, and so I really appreciate that. He's been a leader along the way, and frankly, I don't think we'd be here right now if he hadn't continued to lead this effort. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
This is a really important issue to me because I'm a firm believer that our climate change is the biggest existential threat to our generation and future generations to come. And I believe that we have to do our part to combat it. While tackling this on the local level seems unimpactful, our steps to reduce demand for single-use plastics has a bigger impact than you think. If communities reduce demand of single-use plastics locally, we'll also reduce the demand for things like hydraulic fracturing or drilling, which have even more harmful impacts on the environment than just the plastic straws. It also reduces the burden that we're placing on our already overfilled landfills and reduces the impact that we're having on our wildlife and ecosystems. But more than that, what it does to the environment, the overuse and overdemand of single-use plastics, I would contend, is a public health crisis. Our drinking water, our soil, and our air have plastics in them. Studies have also found that plastics are now in our blood, our tissues, and in our organs. I think we must all work together to solve this problem, to address for the safety and well-being of all. Still, I was sensitive to the fact that this may place an unnecessary burden on the disability community by making plastic straws harder to obtain. I've been thoughtful about this, and as Mr. Pugliese, did I pronounce that correctly? Close? Pugliese? Sounds Italian. He mentioned that I brought this concern up mostly because I know that the disability community has been regularly ignored in our public policy making, and I wanted to make sure that that was addressed. Sounds like they're amenable to that change, so thank you. Thank you for taking the time to really research New York's policy. It sounds like it's a good move forward. Ultimately, my hope is that by reducing the need for single-use plastics, creates a demand for innovation in the marketplace for better, more environmentally friendly alternatives moving forward. I don't think we need to rush this process. I think this can, to Mr. Quinn's points, I think we can take some time to really be thoughtful about this. I know we've been waiting for 2 years, but I'd like to have a meeting with our commissioners on the Environmental Committee, some members of the EAC, to really go through this legislation, make sure it's the best that we can really present forward, and have some conversations in between now and then with some of our local businesses to make sure that they're on board and prepared for the changes that might come. So thank you again, and thank you for allowing me to make remarks.
You're most welcome. Does anybody else have anything they want to discuss on this topic right now?
Mr. Chairman, I was going to say, I don't have a problem with reviewing it further. And I don't think we're rushing it through, because it's been, as Mr. Pugliese stated, at least 2 years. And he did a countless number of surveys and his own work review of the process. And again, the concern for handicap, I was concerned about it after you spoke to me about it, Commissioner. And that's why I asked at the restaurant if they had the plastic. And again, they provided it to me rather quickly. But again, I don't have a problem with us looking at it further. I don't know what other alternatives are out there for restaurants, for fast food. I don't know. I don't think there isn't any right now, but studies have shown, and Mr. Pugliese, you can attest to this, that they're finding plastics in a lot of the marine life, and it's ending up in marine life every day. Turtles, for example, look at them plastic bags and think it's jellyfish and try to eat it. So many fish are getting caught up in it and dying. I saw something the other day where in another country, they have volunteers that go down and try to free up marine life from plastics plastics have encroached upon their systems. So again, I don't have a problem with it, but I think at some point, I mean, if other municipalities have acted,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I mean, I think one of the things is we have to fill in the date when it's going to be effective. And if we have, I think you said a year, if we have 8 months to a year or somewhere in there for the effectiveness, we can meet with businesses along the way and address things. I don't know. I'm sort of with Commissioner D'Amelio that I don't know if we need to put it off necessarily voting on it. I mean, we can address it along the way during the period, and obviously if there's something that needs to change, I guess we could, but I don't know if we want to just push it off to meet with the environmental group, unless there's something that somebody sees in here that they specifically want to change with the ordinance, as opposed to something that is how the ordinance would be enacted and what we would do to support our businesses along the way. So I think those are two different things in terms of, basically, I don't think that we should put off voting on it. Unless somebody has a specific thing that you think we should address.
I think I have a concern based upon the last time we brought this up. We had 2 specific groups of disabled people come here. I think this impacts, as Connor pointed out, the business community in the township. Even simple things like packing the second half of your meal that you don't eat. Now you may have to pay for those containers to take them out because they're banned. There's no plastic bag to prevent spillage. There's not, that type of stuff. But I think we owe it to the disabled groups that we need to publicize this. We probably almost need to have a separate meeting for the business community to weigh in and the disabled groups to weigh in. It was pretty apparent. I think we were all woken up when those several people spoke about the need for straws that we hadn't thought of. But this is a very significant thing. We've heard the opinion of the EAC. I think we owe it to hear the opinion of the public as well and publicize it and get them so that they can come in and make public comment in just a week or a month, maybe next month. I mean, I wouldn't do this next week at all. I think we need to publicize it on the cable access channel and put it out there in newsletters that it's going to be voted on, and we're looking for public comment from all sides so that we can make an informed decision and have input from all our citizens, just like we do in any ordinance that we would pass.
With all due respect, Mr. Commissioner, it's our job to govern. It's our job to govern. And this is something, and we've said that many times up here.
I totally agree, Steve, but it's not our job to dictate.
Steve,
But every major corporation has been dealing with this, the Acme's, the ShopRites. All these stores are well aware that this is happening in the United States, and it's working. It's working in Philadelphia. It is working. People are bringing reusable bags every single day. So it is working, and if that's working, it is reducing pollution. But I want to understand more about people with disabilities. I think these restaurants, other than the plastic straw, which again, this is what, and I called you as soon as I called Peter as soon as I got this to make sure he understood that I took this serious. I took the concerns that Judy presented, because I didn't think of it, Judy, to be honest with you. I didn't. But it was refreshing to know that they were able to provide it quickly. So I don't know what other concerns that we can calm the people with disabilities down when we know that this is going to happen. These corporations and companies know that they're going to provide these straws.
Well, maybe Mr. Wexler, to meet your concerns, as you said, maybe we vote on it next March, but we keep if we're going to fill in the effective date for, if we were going to say January 1st of 2023 or whatever, we keep that effective date the same whenever we vote on it next month. I just don't, I don't want to send it to a committee to come back 3 months from now. I'd rather.
No, I just think we need to publicize it if we're going to vote on it.
That's fine.
It needs to be publicized so that any interested party can come and make public comment, that's all.
And I agree. And I
Absolutely.
think maybe to meet that concern and to meet Commissioner D'Amelio's and my concern, we could just agree that the effective date is then 11 months instead of 12.
When I made this suggestion, I was suggesting March, a month to, again, allow it for it to be publicized and for input to come in, and for 4 of us on the committee to have a conversation. Because frankly, I want to ensure its success. And to me, that means even if it takes an additional month, having that conversation to ensure its success.
And I completely agree with you. I think that we need to weigh all the pros and cons and just have talks with everybody that we can so we get this right. And it's not anything that the town thinks that we're trying to overreach or something. So that's a concern too. So
How can they think that when we're trying to save the environment? I mean, they're not going to think we're overreaching. How can they even think that? I mean, it's not like this is all new and we're the first municipality to enact this. I mean, Philadelphia did it.
yeah, Steve,
Philadelphia.
I'm not agreeing with you. This has been an issue. I think that everybody has
But Americans are aware that it's happening. They are aware of it. They are educated on it.
I'm just saying
Unless
that
they live in a cave.
I'm saying that we have to get this right.
How is it wrong?
If we're going to push it to March, though, can we get a finalized ordinance well before that? Because right now, we don't even know what we're voting on.
So I have no problem. If you want to wait till March, I have no problem with that. I mean, I'm reasonable. Let's wait till March.
Yeah, this is.
But I wouldn't go beyond that, right?
Yes, that would be my recommendation, Mr. President.
You can go beyond March, right? No. That's fine.
Colleagues, this is what I would suggest. I think we do have a 4-person, 4-commissioner board that deals with our environmental issues. We have been presented an ordinance that has some changes from what was presented several years ago. There are also, and there's a lot of, in addition to pros and cons, as you described, Commissioner Quinn, there are just ingredients to this that still aren't in there. What would the fines be? What's appropriate? Is there any, are the fees, how are the fees going to be established? Are we going to move on to take out containers, to stirrers, to things like that? I see no reason why this committee can't also get the assistance of our solicitor, who personally participated, I believe, in the drafting of the Narberth ordinance. If the committee can get that advice and then report back to us sometime prior to the work session in March, which the calendar is like it should be, that would be March 7th, 28 days from today. If it's possible for that committee to come back to us with an ordinance they are happy with, an ordinance we can publish that night, we can tell people now that work session will be perhaps the final discussion at the township level of what we're going to do here, and then that gives the public 5 weeks now to be prepared to come and speak on these issues and to provide feedback to any one of us on the board of their issues, all businesses out there, all advocates on this issue, to give their comments to their own commissioner or anybody on this board that can be filtered down to our environmental subcommittee and then reported back to us on March the 7th. I think that is recognizing the importance of working on this quickly, but I think also recognizes that there are holes in this, and this is the first consideration of this after a 2-year hiatus. So we should we should avoid being accused of moving too fast, but we should also avoid any accusation that we're just postponing this for the sake of not actually enacting it. So I'm going to suggest that I'd like to assign this to the committee with the expectation that we will have what they are satisfied with as a final ordinance for March 7 for us to look at and consider, for them to get whatever advice they need from our solicitor, to invite any input from the business community, and also for us to indicate now, and we'll repeat it at next week's meeting, that this is significant legislation we're going to take up in a month. This is significant, and it will profoundly change what a lot of our small businesses, have to do in the future. And we should treat it with the seriousness that this is going to land on the business community. So I would recommend that that's how we proceed, and unless anybody strongly objects, I would suggest that's how we go.
I'm fine with that.
Excellent. Is there would anyone else like to speak right now on this topic? Okay. The next item is an item that I asked to put on this agenda, but I'm asking to take it off the agenda, an ad hoc committee for the library. Basically, what I have in mind is when we are farther along with this set determination of what we're going to do, I had in mind that perhaps fundraising may be an element to what should be part of the library rehabilitation or construction. There may be opportunities for a committee designed solely for the purpose of this project to undertake one or two specific tasks, but I don't think right now we're in a position or a place to have a meaningful discussion about that. So I'm going to take it on my own initiative to remove that from the discussion. I move to Commissioner Committee updates. Is there any Commissioner Committee Chair, Vice Chair, or member who would like to report on their committee?
Mr. President, I met with
Yes,
the
Dr. Hart.
Cable TV Committee, and it appears that unlike our other committees, we never gave them a mission statement. There's nothing in our municipal code that describes what they are supposed to be doing for us, and they're looking for leadership there. So I'm going to suggest that the other members of I'll meet with the other commissioners on the committee and Mr. Berman, and we will try to determine that. I will say that most of the other local municipalities do not have a cable TV committee. Those that do tend to have cable access, which Radnor and Lower Merion both have cable access, Haverford doesn't. So, but we'll have that discussion. I believe that would be Commissioners Emilio, McCloskey, and Quinn.
Excellent. Were you able to determine, was there ever any basis for what any description or?
We were not
recitation?
able to find anything, or I certainly wasn't.
Well, I look forward to it, starting with a blank slate, and we all look forward to seeing what that charge could be. Any other commissioner committee would like to report?
Mr. Chairman, not that it's a committee, but it was sort of like a committee when Dan was on the board and I was on the board. Well, I'm still on the board. Dan, Mario, I met. That's the 476 interchange. Can you give us an update on that? What's happening?
Are you pointing to
Oh,
Mr.
I'm sorry.
Faulkner?
Our,
Mr. Faulkner, if you could report on, I guess, the latest developments of the 476 interchange that Commissioner D'Amelio was asked about?
Right. I believe that most of you probably realized there was a public meeting. I believe it was about a week and a half ago at this point now, where the whole project was discussed, and there was some back and forth and questions and all on that. Just basically, the project is geared towards reconfiguring the alignment, not so much the alignment, but the traffic lanes across the Blue Route there from North Lawrence Road all the way out to the Blue Route there. So there'll be a dedicated lane from Lawrence Road that will take you right onto the Blue Route. And then traffic coming down, going west on Westchester Pike will have to go a little further up and get on the Blue Route that way. So that's basically the design associated with that. I know in the meeting they went through some of the, excuse me, they went through some of the schedule and some of the milestones that still need to be taken care of. And I believe all goes well. They're looking to let that project sometime probably early 2023. There's still some clearances that are needed, design work that has to be done and all that. But the biggest hurdle there was to get some input from everybody through there and go back and take a look at it. So I hope that answers your question, Mr. D'Amelia. If you have anything else.
No, I
certainly
mean,
try.
so it's on schedule for 2023? Is that subject to change or not happen? It's going to happen. The governor allotted the money, correct?
You're correct. It's going to happen. Like everything else, like the trail back here, everything that where there's federal money involved, there's a defined process for doing that, okay? And it has to go through a number of clearances, a number of reviews and design phases and such like that. It takes time. There's PennDOT reviews, there's other federal highway reviews that have to be done, so it will be done. The schedule is subject to change, though.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Faulkner. Thank you, Commissioner D'Amelio. Are there any other committees or quasi-committees who'd like to report on anything right now? Okay. Lieutenant Scott, are you prepared to, and can you give us the crime update? Sorry, the police update. I really don't want to call it the crime update. Give people the wrong impression, yeah.
The chief's report for January 22, we had 10 criminal arrests, 5 juvenile arrests, 90 traffic citations, 8 non-traffic citations, 86 written warnings, 99 total parking tickets. We had 1 burglary, 700 block of Haverford Road was a commercial burglary of a service station. Police responded for an alarm. Entry was discovered made through the rear door by removing vent panels to access the lock. Taken during that burglary were Pennsylvania emissions and inspection stickers and 1 handgun. We had 10 thefts from autos. 8 of those were catalytic converters, and 2 of those were from unsecured vehicles. The unsecured vehicles, we had some change, some cash, and a few personal items taken. The catalytic converters have been a big problem countywide and region-wide. We made a few arrests. I believe it was in December. We made a few arrests on those, did deter for a brief period of time, and then other actors started coming in, it seems, and we're back at it again. We had 1 canine usage. Canine Django was deployed for an alarm back on January 10th in 1300 block of Westchester Pike at the Liberty Service Station. No persons were located. Canine Django thoroughly searched the property with negative results. Additionally, we had 3 officers go to the funeral of NYPD officer Jason Rivera on January 28th in New York City, and also this past Wednesday, 7 officers attended for NYPD officer Wilbert Marr's funeral. And that concludes the report for the chief.
Lieutenant, thank you for that. You anticipated my question about the catalytic converters. I wanted to, I understood there had been some activity and perhaps some progress in that case, but as you, as the police are surmising, that just the actors have been replaced by other bad actors?
Yes. Take one group out, another group will move in.
And I do wish to express on behalf of our entire board, and particularly myself, our deepest sympathies for the families of those officers in New York, and to all of you police officers who I understand feel those losses very personally. And it is not an insignificant act that members of our force go to New York to attend those services. It's a great show of respect, and it's something that we respect as a board.
Thank you for that, sir.
Does anybody have any questions for Lieutenant Scott? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So the next thing in our agenda is a preview of the agenda for next week's meeting. First thing we'll be doing is a proclamation that I referenced earlier today. And it's a proclamation, the body of which I'll share with us on the board this week as it's drafted. The next ordinance is a traffic reading. A traffic ordinance is second reading. I ask, but don't anticipate that anybody right now wants to discuss that. The next ordinance is the plastic bag ordinance, which we have decided as a board will be seriously considered at the March meeting, so that will be removed from next week's agenda. First reading of traffic after that. Is there anybody at this point who wants to discuss that ordinance? The ordinance P4, after that, an amendment to our pension and employee benefits, that is a first reading. I trust that our finance director will be advising us about that at next week's meeting. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Cuthbertson tonight? After that, resolution number 2250 is a comprehensive fee schedule. It includes some changes to our fees. Those are indicated to us in a red line document. If anybody has any questions, I invite them to raise them now or raise them with Ms. Cuthbertson this week, and we can address them before we adopt the resolution next week. Paging through the resolution, I do not see any changes, so actually I will ask, is this a black line document, or do we have any changes to the fee schedule?
This is a black line document. There's just very few, so might have just missed them. There is one on what is labeled as page 7 under item T.
Okay, early morning rentals.
Correct. And then there is one regarding pavilion rentals within the Parks and Rec Department, and that's on page 5 under letter O.
So, and if I understand this correctly, so it's the Township Park Pavilion, that is a change to a fee, but am I correct that with regard to the skating rink, this is a new fee, meaning?
It's a revision. You are correct on the Park and Recreation one on the pavilion. That is a change. Under the skating rink, if you'll remember last year, we implemented a structured fee schedule regarding the times of the rentals and different pricing for that. And what we found was there was also a regular group who was renting in the early morning hours, so we wanted to encompass that rate as well into the fee schedule.
So this is not a change in the fee, this is just an increase in the hours that are applicable to this fee?
Yes, and specifying that if you're a very early rental, that your fee is different than the prime times.
Great, thank you. The next item on the agenda is a professional consultant fee schedule. That has been provided to everybody in I believe in a clean and black lined version. Does anybody have any comments on that?
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes, Madam Vice President.
This may be directed at Ms. Cuthbertson. I noticed that there was a reduction in the hourly rates for the township solicitor. And while I never shy away from a good reduction, we did have concerns that we had expressed previously for sticking with the $175 hourly rate for the township solicitor so as to not allow for bidding wars in the future when we're considering, sorry about that, so as to not have bidding wars occurring when we're considering our township solicitor. That fee comes directly from Mr. Walco's proposal and what we've been billed by his firm, and that's just a direct
representation of that fee. So if there's a change in what we're going to be paying Mr. Walco's firm, we can also change this, but typically it's the same. Whatever we're being charged, we pass on. This is for the instance of if we have to review a plan for land development or something, and we have to have our attorneys look at it for whatever reason, that we would pass on the same fees that we're charged to the person who's using our legal services. And the same with the persons that might be using our engineering services. The engineering services listed there are a direct reflection of what Pannoni Associates charges us as well.
Right, and I think this was the subject of a great deal of discussion, but during our interview process, because questions had arisen about different rates proposed by different solicitors, and it was the determination of us in those meetings that we had an established rate, and whatever people and we were going to basically keep it at that rate regardless of the proposal, because my concern was, or a concern expressed by a number of people, was that it could become, in the future, we could be dealing with, offers of solicitorships for $125 an hour and $110 an hour and $135 an hour, and somebody else at $175 an hour. And the question might then become for us simply a matter of what the fee is, as opposed to, as we do with all professional services, coming up with the best responsible bidder. And so while I certainly appreciate Mr. Walco's firm's offer at doing this at $165, it really had been the determination of all of us during those discussions that our rate was going to stay the rate that we had been paying our solicitors. So it certainly is going to be my recommendation next week before we adopt this resolution that we return that to last year's rate.
Okay, we can discuss with Mr. Walco, and whatever his firm is billing us, we'll make this the same.
Does the board vote on that then, at the next meeting?
Well, the board will vote on this resolution, and obviously anybody who has anything to say on the topic can speak on it now or speak on it then. We had lengthy discussions when we were interviewing the solicitor candidates and then discussing solicitor candidates afterwards about the issue of rates. And I certainly believe a critical mass of us had come to the conclusion that our rate was what our rate was, and anybody who was going to ultimately be hired as our solicitor would be hired at the rate the township deems appropriate for the work. And not necessarily, certainly not the rate if it was over that number, but we felt like that the rate should stay at that number to avoid exactly what I just described, which would be fee pressure and what I'd call a bidding war for that work. But the floor is open. This is a public resolution and a public issue, and if anybody wants to be heard on the topic, please
my
speak.
interpretation of our discussion was that we were going to pick the firm that we felt was the best, and that this was our fee. We weren't going to, and if a firm, Mr. Walco's firm, we were going to choose, the cost wasn't the issue. But if they want to charge us at a lower fee, I'm not quite sure why we want to give them more money.
That was his proposal.
I appreciate that, and I just and I think again I would, and we have published this fee before, and this year is the first year maybe where I paid really close attention to it. But having different fee proposals come in, it's not something I want us to encourage. I want us to be charging the rate that we think is fair to pay solicitors for our work, and that if each year it depends on what the rate is charged by the person we pick, that rate could go higher than we usually want to pick. It could go lower than what we want to pick. So what I'd rather say is that Haverford Township, as of right now, as of last year, and as for years, paid $175 an hour for its solicitor work, and that is the rate we pay. And we invite solicitors to provide us those services, and and I wanted to take a rate, war out of it. But Bill, you're looking at me like I'm speaking Greek, so please.
I don't want to take you with me to buy a car, that's for sure.
I was going to say that. I was just going to say
But
that.
I'm not buying a car. That's not. These are professional
No, I mean,
services. These
this
are not.
is-
Yeah, this is.
I don't think
not
it's our
buying-
job to set Mr. Walco's firm's fees.
I
I think
agree.
he made a proposal to us, we accepted it, and that's the fee. I don't think government should turn around and set private firms' fees and cost structure, so. it's my opinion.
I will agree with that, Mr. Wexler.
It obviously it's whatever a majority of this board feels is correct. I mean, it is something we talked about a lot. So I'm actually surprised to see this change. I thought it was something that we did discuss, but I guess obviously we didn't discuss it as clearly out loud as I did in my own head. So I certainly invite anybody to make their opinions felt on this or known. I think for the same reason that we would not tolerate upward pressure, I am not eager to jump on the offer to accept this reduction, because I think that implicitly puts the message out there that price will be a consideration. And I think when we set a price that we think is appropriate, it takes price out of our consideration, and we strictly limit ourselves to getting the highest quality work. And so that is my concern. I have no interest in providing a windfall to Mr. Walco's firm, but I am concerned about just establishing the right precedent and making sure we put the right factors into consideration when picking our professionals, and don't send the wrong message out to the professional community. But we got a week to consider this, and we'll vote on it then. In the meanwhile, don't make plans for your in-ground pool, Mr. Walco. Well, after all that, does anybody have anything to say about Resolution 2252, Policy and Procedure for Consultant Selection involving multimodal grant-funded projects? Of course, you have the opportunity next week to speak on the same subject. Resolution 2253 is really a ministerial transfer of funds. And then finally, a reimbursement agreement, Resolution 2254, the Recreation Department and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Does anybody have anything to say on that topic? We will also be considering a professional services agreement with Discover Haverford, formerly known as HPED, to administer the Facade Improvement Grant Program. This is something we did talk about last month, right? And this was tabled, is that correct? So I know there was a great deal of discussion and presentation on this issue just several weeks ago, and we will look forward to that next week. There are purchases next week in the Public Works Department and the Information Technology Department, as well as there are still a couple appointments remaining to be made. Those appointments, whether or not they're individual wards or board, should still be done next week when we take official action.
Mr. President, just a question. The reappointment to the at-large members, I don't believe we ever appointed at-large. Both of these members are from my ward who wanted to be on the Senior Advisory Committee, they went to the meetings and they're not.
Wasn't one of from your ward took the place of one of mine, right?
There's someone on Kevin's. There's a lot of people from my ward who want to be on this committee.
I
So
mean,
I'm
if I can't find
fine with
someone-
appointing them. I just don't know that we need to. Right.
No, I'm saying if I
So-
can't find anyone, which I haven't been able to.
Yeah, then we could appoint one of these members.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
So, but if I understand you correctly, Commissioner Hart, it's the designation of somebody as at large, as opposed to we have 9 appointments, and anybody in the Haverford Township is qualified to serve on the senior, well, and whatever other qualifications there are, there is not a residency per ward requirement for the members of this board, and perhaps that needs to be reiterated. It is a pick for each individual ward commissioner, but that commissioner is not confined to only a resident of their own ward to serve as their representative on the senior citizen advisory.
Right, it's just that the at-large, I mean, basically there are 9 members who could vote on issues. The other members can come. It's like the EAC. There are many people who participate. If there's a vote on an issue, it's only the appointed members. So I'm just, these members.
Oh, all right. So I completely misunderstood that. So
Yeah.
this is to add more than 9 members.
No, I don't think we need to do this.
Oh, okay. Because
Because it's not an official, they're not at-large members. There are 9 members.
They just go and like advise them.
Right.
Just,
There are only 9 members. They're appointed by commissioner by ward. And what Commissioner Hart is saying is that we don't need any at-large members appointed. And we also, it sounds like we already have 9 already.
Unless Commissioner D'Amelio needs someone, then one of these members could be appointed.
We'll clean that up for next week.
Okay.
Mr. Holmes,
yes, Commissioner Forster.
can I ask how long the trucks last that Public Works Department wants to buy? Because just wondering about their lifetime for usage.
Sure, that is a fair question. Not an answer I have any idea of, but who's here from Public Works today?
would that be similar to what the chief said last month about when they buy the police vehicles too? Like, do you think it would be? I don't know. I'm just asking.
Police vehicles, I think, are typically 5 years of use. I've got to imagine our Public Works equipment is longer than that.
The larger trucks last longer than that, but it depends on the type of equipment that it is. There's one tree truck. There are dump trucks that'll last different number of years. So we can get you the specific details about these for next week.
But that would be lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, and I expect that Mr. Mariani will be here next week and can answer any questions anybody has about that. In particular, Madam Commissioner, you're speaking about the cab and chassis and the stainless steel dump body, the Public Works 2022 purchases. Is that correct?
Yeah, the first 3 that are each averaging about $80,000. Yeah.
Got it. Well, we will, this week, if you can, if you want to reach out to Mr. Mariani to get more specific answers to that, or to speak with him next week at the meeting, if you want to do it publicly, that'd be great.
I think Mr. Barman can just email us tomorrow after he talks to his department chief and get same information to all of us. I think that'd be more appropriate.
Or since it came up here at the public meeting, though, it would be great to just repeat it next week when we have the information. Yeah, make it available to folks. All right, that is all we have on our agenda. Unless somebody else has anything to offer, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Mr.
moved.
President,
Oh, wait.
no, hold on. One thing, I just wanted to announce the annual.
Hold on
trail-
one second. Hold on a second. Yes, Commissioner Hart.
The annual Trail Summit, which is typically held at the CREC, is this Saturday, although
Saturday.
because of COVID, it will be a virtual event. I'm not sure how people, what website would they want to register? If you go to havetrail.com, you can sign up for the summit, which is from 9 to 12 Saturday morning.
Also on our Facebook account, Recreation Facebook.
And it's also on the Recreation Facebook account. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Hart. But you've done us a service. I mean, to the extent that between this week and next week, there's any significant township event, I guess this isn't a bad time to raise those. Is there anything else we should be aware of? Okay, well, then we are adjourned.